Hey everybody, this is Thai Company here. Welcome to today's live stream. Hope you all been doing well so far today. And today is April the 5th, 2024. Hope your month of April has been going well so far. Hope your week's been amazing. So for today's live stream, we're going to be talking about the subject of some of the past like I guess you could call like girl relationships I've had. What I mean by that is it's kind of a follow up of what Choppa was saying the other day, and he was like, "Thai, when you going to get a girl, you should be married by now. You should do this and that." And I'm like, he was like trying to, what do you call it? Speed things up, I guess, with trying to get me married. And I'm like, Choppa, you trying to do your own weird thing that I'm like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with what you're trying to imply or what you're trying to tell me to do, even. And so to kind of, I guess, answer some of those questions of what Choppa was saying, and then also kind of talk about the general subject about some of the relationships that I've had in the past with, hanging out with girls, trying to have a relationship with a girl and all that. So, and also at the same time, I'm eating some enchiladas. Kind of cool, I guess. It's kind of hard to show everything because of the angle of the camera, I guess. They're enchiladas in like a green pepper sauce or probably tomatillos is what I'm thinking. But yeah, maybe a green salsa. So kind of cool. But yeah, so now it's a little tough to talk about because one, I've had all kinds of relationships and some of them are kind of more sensitive than others, I suppose. But I can kind of talk about a few, at least the ones I definitely feel comfortable talking about. And going way back when, probably be from elementary school when I was like in the third grade or so. We had this one girl who I won't say her name, but abbreviation I can think of that we could probably say that's safe for YouTube would be, and also to protect everybody's privacy and all that. Let's see. I think we could say her initials were SG, right? So SG was this girl who was now one weird tendency for some reason back when I was in school, in high school. Not so like by the time I was finishing high school, I think my interest started like going in other directions, but just kind of cover different topics, I suppose, right? So when I was in third grade, to give you all a little bit of a backstory, we were in this weird program where I was in what's called a French language magnet program, or language magnet program was really the name of the entire school educational program. And so they had me in like a special school in the city of Charlotte that was a school that was basically where they taught foreign languages. And now when I was in third grade, we had this girl who was, I I guess maybe she was Mexican. I don't know. I just have a feeling that she was. I don't know for sure. But she was sort of weird. Like when we first, like, everybody got to know her, she was like, okay, sort of friendly, but not too friendly. What was weird was like as like everybody in class was like getting older, she started getting like really aggressive towards everybody, like mad. But what was weird was she would be doing really sketchy stuff. Like I want to say she was like one of the few people, first of the group of girls to hit puberty. So she's growing and all that, meaning that body parts are growing. So third grade me is like, okay, this is weird, and on top of that, this girl had this weird, sketchy habit of trying to wear like white see-through clothing. And it, to me, thinking about it now, I just thought it was so weird. But I ended up later realizing why this was being done. Turns out that girl's family was part of this like group of families in Charlotte who were not really like native to Charlotte. They were native to like you could say Latin America, I guess, but like a special sector of the Latin American population or demographics that had this high belief of finding a husband and marrying super early. So what does that mean exactly? That means like, a lot of people may think that, oh, when you turn 18, you're adult. That's like the time to go find and, get married and all that. Now, in reality, that's not really the case. It's really like whenever the right time comes along. Because, there's people who, marry and have relationships young. They have it when they're old. It varies. It fluctuates. So, there's in my mind, I don't think there should be a pressure to get everything done at a certain time. Now, there is also an additional argument that, oh, you want this to be done earlier because of the reason of like making sure your kids are old enough to take care of you when you're old. Like, I get that logic. But then there's like the other side where it's like, oh, don't want to have it when you're old and not too young because you're too young to take care of the kids and you won't know how to take, which is, the other kind of a counter argument here too, right? So, in my mind, it's like, don't like rush, let it be up to you. You shouldn't be the person who's like gets forced. But then there's like, there's people and cultures that have like arranged marriages, and I don't know how exactly that works. And, that's something I'm still kind of researching to understand from the sociological perspective and maybe the social cycles perspective. Psychology or psychosocial. I don't know however you want to go about calling that. The mix of psychology and sociology and all that, right? So to get back to what I'm talking about. So that's kind of like the first girl, and she started getting aggressive, and then nobody was really liking her because she was getting in trouble all the time. But people were having this like weird fantasies. And what I mean by that is like all the classmates were like, oh man, I wish I could get with her somehow. And, having these weird, like crazy ideas or fantasies rather. But like, what kind of freaking fantasies would you be having? I'm not saying that I had it. I'm talking about the other classmates that they had these crazy fantasies that they were going to get with this girl and have a relationship or whatever. But like, what kind of freaking, I don't know what kind of imaginations freaking, kids from 3rd to 5th grade would have, but that's a scary thought to think of, really. But otherwise, we didn't really have anything crazy going on in elementary school. Otherwise, the only other people I can think of were like, girls you want to be friends with, maybe they, or like, I think in my case, like Cartoon Network started showing like a bunch of the anime shows. So we had a lot of girls who were like into anime. So you would have maybe some friends that way. Because I remember like 5th grade, we had like 3 or 4 girls who were into like all the anime shows. So like, I think Inuyasha was one of the big ones. I think one girl was into Sailor Moon. Nobody was into Naruto yet. Naruto was like when I was in middle school. I'm trying to think what other shows people were interested at that time. But middle school is when things started getting crazy because we started getting a bunch. They like took a bunch of schools and then they like threw them all into my school. So we had students, my group of students, and then we had kids from like a Spanish academy. So we had all these like Spanish kids, basically more Latin American kids. And we had a huge influx of girls from Peru, from Ecuador. I think Ecuador is like number 1 that we had back then. There was also a few girls who were like from Colombia, but maybe a couple of like Mexican girls that threw in there as well. But thing to come across, and like I didn't, I'm like, how am I supposed to react to this, right? And I was super shy, so like I would never like go up to talk to them. But I had a list of probably like 10 that I was, but I didn't know what to do because I was like, like I think at that point in time, people did start having these wild fantasies, but it's nobody did anything serious. But the only thing I could come up with was like the first girl I mentioned, SG. What she ended up doing was she met up with one of these boys who were like, I don't know if he was from like Honduras, El Salvador, or Guatemala, some like Central American country. What was crazy is she ended up getting with him, and by the time everybody went into early high school, which was like she not only was like, she had a very intimate relationship with this guy she met, and next thing I know, when we all go into ninth grade, she ends up having a kid with the guy. So that tells me that by the time the girl was probably still 14 years old, she had her first. I thought that was like the weirdest, craziest thing ever. But then it came on to me as an idea, and at that point I was learning Spanish, and part of this learning Spanish, you learn about culture and all that. In a lot of Spanish countries, by the time you're 15, they can consider that as an adult. So I'm like, okay, this is weird, because in my mind, in the U.S. system, it's like, isn't 18 when you're supposed to be an adult? And I was like, why is this such a weird thing? And kids are still kids, but then they're having babies, so that's like, it's for me, it's like, it froze me off. I'm like thinking, like, why in the world is this going on? Oh, hey, by the way, welcome our first user to the chat here, Bear1. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you here. Your emoji sign of a bunch of music notes. That's cool. And a bunch of skull head emojis. Maxer's here. Glad to have you back, Maxer. Hello and welcome to the live stream. So we have 2 people in chat so far. That's awesome. Glad to have you all here. How's your days been going so far? Hopefully it's been going great, going wonderful. Let's see, I'm trying to like figure out how do I talk and eat at the same time. But good. Maxer says he's been doing good. Glad to hear that. I was, my original plan was to make a live stream yesterday, but because of the one on the 3rd, which was like the health update, it like rolled past midnight. So they considered it as if I did it yesterday when really it was 2 days ago. So because of that weird like overlap, and that it said that it was on the 4th, I decided, well, let me not make a second live stream in 2 live streams in one day, because I know some people might consider that to be too much. So I was like, all right, let me take yesterday off. So now, we're back on schedule. All right, Maxer says, should I go on laptop or stay on my phone? I mean, that's up to you. Whatever's easier for you, Maxer. But yeah, so as soon as SG basically got pregnant with, her, what do you call it, baby daddy or whatever you want to call it, right? Her husband or boyfriend or whatever you want to call it. What kind of husband would you have? I guess. So that at freaking beginning of 9th grade, I don't know. That's a weird thing to think about, I guess. So what happened after that? So yeah, the all the different like Latin American girls in middle school. Let's see, because I'm kind of like trying to remember some of these things, because this is like, oh God, over 15 years ago now. So I don't know. We had a weird mix, because we had one girl who was from my original group that I kind of had a small crush on. She was, I didn't know what she was at that time. Turns out later she was half like white and half Mexican. She was in the Japanese program, and for some reason I always thought that she was this like Asian girl, because I'm like, I didn't know any better, and it's like, what, I'm in middle school and I'm not taught any, I haven't been taught anything. Maxer says he's going to go on his laptop. Cool, Maxer. We'll see you on the laptop. But yeah, so I had a crush on that girl. So that's probably the first one that comes up to mind. Then there were 2 Peruvian girls who had a crush on. One was, let's see, kind of like flirty, had very long hair, but her face was like, people had mixed opinions about her face, because they thought that they reminded her of the frog girl from My Hero Academia, with the I forgot what's her name. Let me find her name. What's the name of the frog girl from My Hero Academia? not is it Sabuya or something? I don't remember the name or recall the name. But anyway, she had unusual face, but I kind of find her attractive. And she had like a cousin slash sister who looked very Asian, but was not Asian. But at that point in time, I thought that she was cute too. And she always hang out, hung out with the first girl who was taking Japanese. But arguably, I think the Japanese girl is probably the most attractive of the first three that I'm mentioning right now. Looking back at it now, but that girl who I'm calling Japanese, who's really not Japanese, she ended up moving to a town about an hour north of Charlotte, and then next thing I know, she drops everything and moves to freaking Hawaii and marries some rich white guy because you got to move up in the social ladder. And I haven't heard from her since, other than I think she has 1 or 2 kids with the guy. So that boat has sailed away. Well, what's weird was that those 2 Peruvian girls, the one with the long hair, she ended up finding some other like Mexican guy or somebody. She ended up getting pregnant in high school, and they had 1 or 2 kids. And the Peruvian girl of that relationship, started getting a lot of money from the husband because husband was working in construction. And she started doing these weird things like, spending thousands of dollars on photo shoots of her children. Kind of a weird thing. All right, so Maxer's on his laptop. Whoa, Hawaii. Yeah, from freaking Charlotte, North Carolina, all the way to Hawaii is a very long distance. But I think she got into there because she went for like marine, what do you call it? Marine biology science or marine science. And because of, Charlotte being one of those cities where it's very like, a lot of people like fight for their education, meaning that like people don't be helping each other out there. Everybody's on their own. The girl got like a scholarship to go to, I think, Hawaii. Is it Hawaii State HSU or Hawaii State University? She got some kind of scholarship to go to a college or university over there. But her main goal was not to be studying marine biology, especially since she has no interest or experience in the thing, but to go find herself a husband. Because you got a lot of rich white Americans who live in Hawaii. Maxer says, "Hey, Thigh Company, my pronouns are now they and them. Sorry, it was off topic. LOL. But I just wanted to say it." Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know because I had no clue, and I was like, is Maxer a guy or a girl? How do I address? Like, what's the best way to address Maxer? And I'm like, good thing Maxer told me. So now I am aware. So cool. So that's something good to know. Dang girl, basically, but well, I understand the situation. Yeah, I know a few people who are in similar situations as you, Maxer. But yeah, kind of back to my situation. I'm just kind of like going off some like past memories. The second Peruvian girl, who was like a little bit shorter, looked more Asian. I don't know if she ever found herself a husband. What was interesting was she ended up for many years not doing anything, and then she decided to become a police officer, which I thought was really cool because, well, first of all, when you think about a police officer, you don't think about a shorter Asian girl usually. You think about it being like, a big, muscular guy usually, right? But then I started seeing photographs on Facebook and I was like, oh, this is really cool. But in my mind, I thought it was also a good thing because back when I was growing up, we didn't really see a lot of like Latin or like, what do you call it? Latinx, I guess, if you want to go specifically, police officers in Charlotte when I was growing up. And I thought that was a cool thing, but she wasn't a police officer for a long time. She ended up doing it for a few years. And I believe she ended up getting out of the career and she ended up becoming like a legal assistant for some of the law firms here in Charlotte. So that's kind of a cool thing to look into. Um, so besides those three and also SG, but SG was like one of the first relationships to like go bye-bye. And I was like, I'm not interested in that person anymore. But that was like way back when I was in middle school or early high school when I made that decision. Um, so the next person I can think of was there was quite a bit of girls or quite a huge group of girls from Ecuador. And which was funny because all of them, it was like 5 or 6 or 7 of them. Um, for privacy reasons, I won't say their name. Let's just say their name is a common Spanish name that begins with the letter M. If that that gives you an idea, you could probably guess it and get a good chance of guessing it correctly. But yeah, there was like one girl who acted of them. Everybody was after the girl. Um, what happened with her? She was weird because she liked to go up and start rubbing against people. And I thought that was like the weirdest thing too. And she'd always be like wearing these, for no reason, super tight, like skinny jeans. And in freaking 7th grade to be doing that, I just find that to be weird. Like I get people doing it for fashion and all that, but looking back at it now, to me, it seems weird. Like I get people, liking the fashion and all that, but I swear people be having other thoughts in their head sometimes. But it's weird. I mean, Uchaba probably understands better what I'm talking about, but yeah. So that was one girl. We had another girl who was mixed, super light, skinny, or light skinned, and she was skinny, but her face wasn't really too great. I have no clue what happened to her. She started avoiding everybody for some reason. There was another girl who I ended up becoming friends with later on in high school. Her family was cool, like super cool. Like mom was, I think her mom was a stay-at-home mom, but I think she was also doing a lot of cooking. The dad was cool. The dad did a bunch of things. Like he was a full-time DJ. So he had a full-on like DJ. What do you call that studio kit? Like, with the CDs or the what do you call not the discs, the records. Yeah, the records where you have the system with the computers and all that. He had that huge setup, and whenever I went over there, I thought that was a really cool thing to look at. Mom was friendly. Mom didn't really know much of English, but luckily at that point I was studying Spanish for several years, so we were able to have like basic conversation in Spanish. But the girl herself was like super friendly all the time. She was very super skinny and looked nice in middle school. But for some reason, by the time we were all going into high school, she started gaining a lot of weight. Now, I never told her anything. I didn't, want her, what's it called, hurt her feelings or anything like that. But I was still friends with her. But she wasn't like full on, like what I would call fat, but she was like plump. So kind of, I guess, a more tamer word to say. But a lot of my friends were like, why are you friends with her? She's so big, there's better stuff for you to go for. And I'm like, well, she's friendly. That's why, I'm friends with her. But by the time we got into, I think, 11th grade, she started developing, and it was like hard liquor. Like she had blue curacao all the time was like one of her favorite things. All the like class like stuff you would get at a bar. And it started getting like weird. Like the girl was acting like she was drunk all the time, and I didn't, I wasn't crazy about that. And she started doing a lot of things that in high school I was not a fan of. She was getting like, she had a lot of tattoos, but they were temporary tattoos. But I didn't like the way they looked because it's like it would always be like of random stuff that didn't really look good, and then they were getting like worn off or worn down. Plus, she would always get like super tans. Like she'd go from, I don't even know how to explain it really. Like whatever tan you can think of, like a couple of shades darker than that. So a little too much tanning. But she ended up making me really angry over a couple of things by the time we were at the end of 11th grade, where I was like, I'm cutting off that relationship. Um, and I'll talk about that girl too. I'm gonna call her MM. Um, but yeah, so there were a couple other girls as well. I think what this here are some of the sketchiest relationships I've had. And I don't know if is Max are still in the chat. I think uh, they might be still in the chat possibly. By looks of it, I still have at least one person in chat. Cool, cool. Glad to have you here. So the first super sketchy, and I'll leave the best relationship at the end. But the first sketchy relationship. I mean, you could argue that MM was kind of sketchy of her, like, she'd be the type of person I'll put into freaking Alcoholics Anonymous, like one of those AA groups, because I really feel like she was drinking too much, especially back in high school. And by the time she was in college, she like drank too much. She was having issues. So the first sketchy relationship that I can think of was after the main girl who I had the strongest relationship left my high school. This girl who I'm going to just call her S. You could maybe call her SC, but I'm going to just call her S or SC. She used to go to middle school with me, and she was in a German program. But she was very friendly with all the Latina girls. And I could never figure out why. Turns out the girl knew full on Spanish, even though she looked like, a regular white girl, blonde hair, blue eyes. Turns out her dad was Cuban and mom was from Uruguay, but I later come to find out they were she was part of the the Germans who flew Nazi Germany from World War II into South America. She was from those descendants, meaning that very likely my ancestors probably fought her ancestors during World War II. So you can imagine how awkward that went later on. Russians versus Germans. But anyway, she didn't know who I was really at the time. So yeah, you can imagine how fun that was. But what was weird was like we didn't really talk much at all in middle school. Then she left the country. She moved to Uruguay, was there a couple of years. Turns out she didn't go to school and she was just like hanging out all the time. And when she came back to they were supposed to put her in like 11th grade, but she flunked out everything and they put her all over again, starting from scratch in 9th grade, meaning she was held back by 2 years, which is really bad. Meaning that, like, if you're held back by 2 grades, that's not good. Meaning that you're going to be graduating and you're going to be a whole lot older than everybody else. Everybody's going to be 18 and you're going to be maybe even a bigger difference in ages, right? So when she came back to our high school, I found out that she knew full on Spanish, but I was in my like third or fourth year of taking Spanish, so I could have at least like simple conversational Spanish with her. But the girl was more interested in turns out she had a full on plan of what she was going to do. She didn't care about school. She was caring about how she could find the quickest and easiest way to move up the social ladder. What does that mean? That means like she wants to get rich, she wants to get famous, she wants to be big, basically, right? So what did she do? She first started hanging out with everybody, figure out who is who and what is what. Okay, so she came back to first me and like everybody that she knew before, and we were friends. And I was like, okay, cool. I finally got a new girl who I can talk to, hang out with, who's friendly, and she fit like the demographics of what my Russian side of the family would approve of. And this was before I knew that her family was like German descendants, right? Because my mom and my grandparents were more proving that the girl was blonde hair and blue eyes, because I'm white and she's white, basically. That's the argument, even though I was into other demographics at the time, basically. Now, what was weird was as soon as she started like hanging out with everybody, she quickly like disappeared and started quickly hanging out with only like Hispanics. Then out of nowhere, she went to like different demographic groups. Like for a long time, she was with a group of of people who were. Let me find a way to describe this, right? Because she wasn't hanging out with people by skin color. I want to make that clear because she didn't have any kind of preference of that. She was more interested in social groups based on who got the most money, who was like the richest, who was the most quote unquote powerful, if that makes any sense, right? So she was hanging out with like these people would call the ghetto people or the gangster people. And these are people who actively knew were buying and selling drugs and doing other stuff. She was interested in hanging out with them because not of the drugs, but of the money. She wasn't there long. She ended up from them figuring out who were the rich white kids who were doing drugs. She ended up hanging out with that group, and that's how she eventually found her current husband. So what ended up happening was she started hanging out specifically with select group of rich white kids. And, you know, I was not part of that group. I was part of like the poor, arguably the poor group. And so I wasn't really seeing the girl, but then I started figuring out what was going on through social media like Instagram and Facebook back in the day. So this would have been like 2012, 2013. So almost like 11, 12 years ago. So she was hanging out with a bunch of people, and I was like, all right, so, you know, this girl's lost. You know, you can see photos of her smoking marijuana and all that. And I was like, that's not for me. Turns out the girl had a sister. Her sister was like a year younger. And I figured, all right, well, maybe the younger sister's better. I started trying to hang out with the younger sister. Turns out apparently somebody had let both the first girl know and her younger sister know that I was poor and not somebody to be bothering to have a friendship with, at least, right? And so, you know, I wasn't happy about that, but I figured, you know, let me still, you know, give it a shot. Maybe something's going to happen, right? Maybe, you know, at least be friends. Who knows, right? So I start talking to this to younger girl. I'm gonna call, you know, older girls, the younger girl's MC. So MC starts telling me, "Oh, my name's not MC. You know, my name is Daisy. Daisy, yeah, that's my name. I don't know who you are. Go away from me. You're bothering me. Why are you stalking me?" You know, doing everything that she can do to make me look like a freaking weirdo. And I'm like, all right, screw you. I'm going to go off to do my own thing. So I figured, you know, MC's this total piece of work, but, you know, maybe I might, you know, wait a few months and then maybe give SC another chance. So unfortunately, at that time, I was very overweight. I think I was like, God, I think my weight would have been like, Jesus, it was 2013. So this was after the first girl left. I probably was in like, I was probably 245 or 250 or 255 back in high school, which was really big. And everybody, you know, would have called me fat back then. So I figured that was probably the major thing. And then plus, I didn't really have a huge fashion sense at that point. I mean, I had some fashion sense, but it was like, I think the more, what do you call it, single mother, you know, my mom being single or recently divorced and all that. You know, a few other things. You know, I had grandparents I needed to take care of and all that. So I think what ended up happening was towards like, you know, school lets out in June. And I think this was like getting towards like end of May. And I was like, let me try one more time. And I tried talking. And as soon as I said hello, this girl put on the most like disgusted look on her face, rolled her eyes, and walked away. You know, and I felt like crap when that happened. And when that happened, I went into 12th grade and I was like, well, let me do this. I'm not going to care about no girls. My biggest concern is like, I just want to get out of high school. I didn't want to deal with all this nonsense and all that. So that kind of like ruined, I guess, my, later experience in high school. Maxer says, my friend Ben says, hi. Hello, Ben. Welcome to the stream. Hope your day has been going well. But yeah, so SC disappears. Let's see. So that was kind of like the most scandalous or crazy, weird, messed up thing in high school. The other thing that comes to mind in 12th grade, there were a few girls. So sometime in around 12th grade was when I was getting introduced to the idea of not dating or trying to get with a girl the same age as me, but trying to get with a girl who's maybe a little bit younger than me, like a year or younger. And it wasn't really my original idea. It was just an idea that was brought up to me by different friends and family at the time. And the idea was like, well, and I ended up like realizing this a bit later on why this makes sense. But the idea was like, younger girls prefer older men. Usually guys prefer younger women. And, from a social standpoint, that makes sense. But my mind at that time was like, let me get somebody my same age. So what I ended up thinking was like, well, all right, well, I'm a senior. If I try talking to a junior, that might, but that never really worked out though. But there were like two girls who were part Latin but part Italian, and at that point, I was out of Spanish. I wasn't taking Spanish no more, and I was like done with Spanish because I was so tired of going through Spanish. And I got lucky because turns out at that time in North Carolina, you could take Russian online, and I knew Russian. I could speak Russian, but my reading and writing wasn't great. But I could this is an easy A for me for a high school class. So I was taking online Russian, and everything else was a piece of cake. I was taking like the easiest classes I could at that point because I wanted to get out of high school. I didn't care about anything else other than to leave. So I wasn't pestered by going to school, basically. Now, so Italian girls, I was trying to learn some Italian at that point, trying to figure out how to impress the girls. But nothing worked out because I was probably super overweight at that point. I think I was like in my 250s. So I always felt like probably my weight. And then like I was always super shy back in high school. So that probably was another factor. Like, girls don't want, usually what I find, to rephrase what I'm trying to say is that at least at that point in time, girls wanted guys who had confidence, who, wasn't really shy and introverted. They were looking for more extroverted, guys who were more kind of out there. And I wasn't part of that group. I was like the opposite of what, they were going for. As soon as I started working in 2014 at the movie theater. That's when I was starting to get rid of that shyness, because that shyness wasn't going to fly for me to work and having a job. Especially since I was, working in the movie theater, you got to be talking to people. So 2014 and onward, it was kind of when I got rid of that shyness and I started learning how to talk to people. And the biggest thing that helped me the most was when I was in college and I was taking public speaking classes or communication classes, which are usually the same thing as public speaking. That helped figure out, one, how to talk better. When you're talking for a very long time, eventually you start running out of ideas of what to say. And then you start doing things like saying, something as, and those pauses where you're trying to come up with what to say, those instances are called verbal tics, I believe is what they call it. Or it's probably a better word to name when you have those pauses. But what I did was, with a lot of practice, I taught myself that it's better to just have a pause where you're not saying anything. And you also learn a few different tricks and skills of how to pace yourself when you talk. So you're not talking too fast or too slow. Usually it tends to be better slower. So there's a lot of things that you learn over time with practice. But then again, it's still like high school, and it's early adolescence and all that. You're trying to figure out what's going on. But I think when I'm looking back at everything, I talked to Uchapa about the most difficult relationship that I had, which was with a girl who I'll call, which I don't even know how I want to call her for this video. I'll call her LG. LG, I met in ninth grade. We had a very serious relationship that lasted for about at least 2 years face to face. And so ninth grade and 10th grade. After 10th grade, she moved to a different school, and I had no clue where the school is. I know where the school is now, but then she moved up north to like a place that would take like 4 or 5 hours to drive to. It's like up towards like the eastern, like northeastern coast of North Carolina, and Charlotte's down like middle south of North Carolina. So the girl ended up going to college with the MM. So LG went to college with MM. They both went for nursing. They both went to a school that is infamous for being a party school, meaning nobody be drinking too much and partying and all that. LG was one of the reasons why I decided to learn Spanish, because without her, I don't think I would know Spanish. What else? Yeah, I was doing everything I could think of in my mind. Anything you could come up with to be with her. And I spent 2 years every single day trying to come up with something, every single tactic I can think of. And I don't know, it's so difficult to talk about her because of how much of an emotional strain she was to me back then. And what sucks is that I was trying to figure out, how do I hang out with her or see her at least one more time? And I was having all kinds of, crazy ideas and fantasies and all that. And I was unfortunately way too obsessed with her back then. And, I kept talking with her past. And what's weird was like, apparently she came to my graduation ceremony after high school. And somebody was telling me, hey, LG came. Maybe you wanted to meet up with her. And I was like, I don't know why, but I was like, didn't want to see her. And I was almost like as if I was afraid to see her. Because, I didn't know really, I think it was because I didn't know how to act back then. So what ended up happening was she went to this college, right? This party college. You can probably guess which party college if you know your colleges in East North Carolina. But anyway, she went to this college. She ended up finding. Let's see. Hello, welcome, Anthony Castillo or Castillo. Welcome to live stream. You say, bro, what, bro, what? But anyway, yeah. So I guess to finish up that conversation. Yeah, she ended up going to this college. She found this rich guy. Anthony Castillo says, hello, and welcome, Anthony. Hope your day is going well. Hope your month, April, has been awesome. So yeah, the LG, well, MM, well, yeah, so MM ended up finding, I think MM's ended up marrying this African guy. I don't remember his background. The guy was fine, but I think MM was trying to get money out of the guy or something. It was kind of a slightly weird situation. And then they moved back to Charlotte, and she had a lot of kids with the guy, but then she never went for nursing. She ended up working at a freaking Alzheimer's clinic, and she continues to be an alcoholic even within recent years. Or at least last time I tried her, she was trying to get me to some bar to go and drink beer with her, and I was like, no, that's haram. That's haram. Thai Company does not drink, and Thai Company has made a conscious decision not to get into alcohol, especially from my all the scary moments of people being drunk in high school. That's not something I want to get into. But LG ended up finding this rich, like redneck guy who was a former NASCAR driver, and she was doing everything to get with the guy because the guy had way more money than my family did. And it's just a rough thing to think about because they ended up moving back to Charlotte. She did end up getting a nursing license and nursing degree, so she is a registered nurse. Um, but it should, but the first devastating thing was when they officially got married. I was like, I don't know what to do at this point. And then she ended up having her first child, and I was upset at that point. Then I, got over being upset. Then she had a second child, and I was like, all right, it's nothing I'm gonna do at this point. So I, gave up on her, even though this was like, God, this is so drawn out. This was, I think we met in like either 2009 or 2010. I swear I probably was like trying to come up with a bunch of crazy stuff of ways to get with her. Probably up until and I think they married in like 2020, so a good like 10 years, which is just crazy to think about nowadays. That's how overly obsessed I was with her. But thank God that I don't have any interest in her anymore. That's like, I think that's like the most important, that I've managed to clear my mind from all that craziness. Even though it took forever, and luckily I didn't have to go to no counseling or no therapist, because that some of the craziest that she's done is noteworthy to be going to a therapist. But anyway, when I went into high school and then started going to work and all that, didn't really find anything interesting at the movie theater. Everybody was like either not really too attractive, or like as soon as I start talking to them, within a very short time, they either get pregnant or they turns out they already have a boyfriend or something goes on, right? But when I was in high school and university, the only thing that comes to mind was like at the first college that I tried going to, which was a central college in Charlotte. There were a group of girls who one of my friends was like, "Hey, did you know they're Ukrainian?" And I'm like, "Okay, that sounds cool." And now keep in mind, this is 2014, so this is when Ukraine is starting to have their riots in the country, and it doesn't hit me that something's going on between Ukraine and Russia. But this is 2014, so this is technically before the whole Russia Ukraine invasion and all that. But and I was still very overweight. I think I was like, oh God, maybe 255 at least at that point. So I'm, overweight Thai company goes over to these Ukrainian girls and starts talking to them like, "Hey, I heard you all know Russian. I know Russian too. My mom's side is from Russia." And as soon as I said my mom's side is from Russia, they had the most disgusted look on their face. They start like talking crap behind me. And I'm like, this is not gonna float with Thai company. So I leave and never talk to them or see them again. And otherwise, the first movie theater didn't really have much because it's like in a poor area, and there's this weird like tendency. And I hate to say that this is true, but there's a tendency where you don't see a lot of attractive girls in poor areas, because I think the logic behind it is that they tend to want to go for people who are richer, so they all go to this like rich area. Maybe that's the logic. It might be wrong in that, of course, but I just didn't really happen to see anybody back when I was working at the movie theater from 2014 to 2017 who was really of much interest to me. The second movie theater was better. There were a few girls who were more attractive. There was one girl who was fairly attractive. A lot of the other like people really were into her. But what was weird was like, I was talking with the girl, but it turns out the girl had a boyfriend who was Italian. But the girl herself was, she kept saying that she was Persian, which really means that she is from Iranian, right? So she's got that little bit of an Arabic look, olive skin, and which is not too far off from like some Latin American color skin of girls. But I found her attractive, basically, and tried talking to her. But then what ended up happening, nothing really was serious because she had her own boyfriend, and I was like, I don't want to be talking with her when her boyfriend comes over. So I didn't really, do anything serious. And then all my friends, I didn't have probably not the best. Well, all my friends were probably kind of racist or prejudiced back then. And they're like, oh, she's an Arabic girl. That means that she's all, this and that. And this is like when people had prejudice against uh, Arabic communities, because they still had this like weird resentment over 9/11 and all that, which I have no clue why this was still prevalent in 2017. I just, when they were telling me this stuff, I just thought this was like ridiculous that they were saying that. And it was like, what's wrong with the girl being Persian, which is what she wanted to call herself. But she ended up moving to Florida, and I never really like was active to really be, talking to her when she moved out of Charlotte. But she has her own YouTube channel where she talks about, exercise and fitness and all that. And, I never really wanted to really talk with her. But I do like watching some of her stuff because she talks about really good, like, dieting, which is very important for health. Because right now I'm mostly focused on, you're not really like, because Uchapa keeps like bugging me, like, when are you going to go find your girl, Thigh? You're almost 30 years old, which in the first person, like my Turkish neighbors were bugging me recently about the same topic. So I decided, well, let me ask this question. And, I figured, my Turkish neighbors, they have kind of a Muslim background. My doctor is also Muslim as well. And I figured, is everybody saying what everybody's saying is it true? Am I really getting too old to find somebody? So I like, I'll go to my doctor and ask the doctor this question. She's like, no, you're nowhere near too old. You're still very young. And they start telling me about a lot of people that she knew, that like there's a lot of recommendations. And then she talks about the statistics in Carolina. And apparently the current statistics in North Carolina is to really be having like the first official relationship that's kind of like goes to marriage in your 30s, which I didn't know that. I thought in my mind that it is based on high school. I thought everybody was trying to find their future wife in high school and then they marry when they turn 18. And, luckily I didn't go down that route, but that was what was ingrained to me back when I was in school, in middle school and in high school. And, I'm glad that I didn't go there. But even now I realized that, well, it's not a pressing concern. And then I realized when I went into, when I left the US and I went into Europe. Now in Europe, there are also very similar situations where a lot of people marry young, but there's also a lot of people who do it like, what's the word? It's not middle age, but it's like, later in life, meaning that later 20s into their 30s. There are people in their 40s and 50s who, have relationships and all that. Like, I know many people who had kids in their 50s, but Uchapa thinks that I should be having kids. He's part of that group of people who's like, you should have your child when you're in your teens, Thigh. In your 20s, you should be having a house and a career. I don't know. I don't understand that. I think it's like, if you want to go down that route, by all means go down that route if you want to. But realistically, and especially by the statistics that was given to me by a health professional, it's perfectly normal and perfectly fine and arguably good to be waiting on that. You shouldn't be rushing. So, I've always found that to be, a very important idea to have in mind. I don't see a reason to be, forcing stuff. I mean, if people want to do it, that's on them. But like, in my mind, I don't think anyone should be forced to be rushing into any kind of relationship. Especially, you don't want to have a superficial relationship too. You should be something that's genuine, that's mutual, and arguably should be something that comes, natural. But it's hard to explain it because, like, we had conversations with with Uchapa and a few other people, and I don't want to be bashing Uchapa too because we're thankfully he's got enough on his plate too. But I guess that the main thing to talk about here is that it's a kind of a journey to be finding the right person. So of course, it's a journey for me too. Um, but to get more to like what Uchapa is saying, my current task right now, my main thing is to be working on my health. I want to uh, be losing more weight. I was gaining some. I talked about on the health update video that I was gaining weight, and I think I got back up to like 237 or 238. Thankfully, I'm down to 229, but I was at 215. So I still got my goal is to try to get at least below 215 by either July or either when I have to do my next like annual physical exam with my doctor, right? Because there we can talk about BMI, the journey progress, and all that, and overall discuss health, which is the most important thing, right? Um, and and I think my ideal goal was to get under 200, like 195 would be fine, even 190. Um, so I think 190 is kind of close to where ideal number would be. I know some people who would argue like 180 or 185, but like my doctor said, you should be having at least 5 to 10 pounds weight more than that. So in case of you get sick or whatever, um, I think I forgot the exact term or the exact name of it, but it's kind of like what they call protective weight. So in case of an issue, you're not like you don't become suddenly underweight or something like that. But it's being like 5-10 pounds over your like ideal weight usually is still healthy and still considered to be within normal healthy BMI. Um, but yeah, I think the idea here is to kind of give like a little bit update and a little bit of a story as to some past related. Um, I'm curious what Uchapa's had because I know Uchapa's had a few weird things go on too, and then nowadays a lot of people do more like online dating or e-dating, um, which I haven't really bothered to try that out, even though I know Uchapa's recommended that to me and a few other people. Because my general preference is to find somebody in real life. Now, there are people who I've tried to talk with online, but they're mainly from like Russia. Um, and they're people who either somebody in my family knows and is not really a stranger. So um, I don't know because I still haven't made a decision on what route to go for. If I want to stick with somebody here in the U.S. or find somebody in Russia, I really don't know. Um, so it's kind of like what you call still in the exploration phase, I guess. So yeah, we'll see wherever that goes. But yeah, I just wanted to more or less give like an update as to, um, or mainly talk about the story about some past relationships that I've had in the past. So yeah, and this was kind of a more or less a request by Uchapa to cover this topic. But I wanted to talk about a quick few updates on the Thigh Company channel. So guys, we've gained a lot of subs recently too. So if you're part of the new group of people who have not subscribed already, we are now. So our new goal is to try to get to 2,500 subscribers by the end of April, which I think we're on very good track to hit that number now. What is the current subscriber number? Let me see if I can pull that up right quick, because we got a lot of subs within the last week. Because I know I just recently talked about hitting 2,000, but now we got like a few hundred more. Um, let me pull up my channel right quick and see where we stand. So we are currently, based on what I'm currently seeing here. Oh, I just got a notification too of somebody. Somebody says something about a portal. I don't know what this is. Somebody called Light Blue Flareon commented, that came from a portal. Oh, he's talking about the elevator game. Yeah, a Roblox game called Elevator Game. So yeah, our current subscriber count, according to what I'm seeing here, is that we are over 2,330 subscribers, which is a very amazing number to be at. But I'll talk more about how the channel's doing when we do the monthly YouTube channel update, which is going to be about mid-April. So yeah, guys. So a main thing to cover also right now. So help us subscribe or help us out if you have not subscribed already. Make sure to subscribe to the Thigh Company channel. Turn on the bell icon so you get notifications for future live streams, videos, and any updates that we do on the channel. Also, give this video a thumbs up, like this video, and also comment down below what you would like to see for future videos, guys. Otherwise, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I don't know if Maxer still is in the stream. Anybody from chat want to ask any final questions or want me to cover any last topics right quick? I don't know if anybody else is still in chat here. It says we could, looks like everybody may have left at this point. I don't know. Um, but yeah, guys, if you haven't already, subscribe, like this video, comment down below what you would like to see for future videos. This has been Thigh Company, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful month of April. Hope your day's been going awesome so far. And again, today is April the 5th, 2024. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, guys. Stay safe and have fun. This has been Thigh Company, and we are out.